Okay, so first of all, I went through multiple Christmas little tunes to try and find the least obnoxious. So I apologise if you don't like it. Best I could do. So I wanted to do something with a Christmas theme for this week. And one of the ones that came up is, again, that Johnson Life. So I've done a few of his now, talking about differences you experience at Christmas in Australia. Now, this, of course, is from the perspective of someone from the UK, so this may not apply to other countries. I'm really curious to see what it is that he highlights as being different. I find it interesting that he's got weird there. I know that a lot of people from the Northern Hemisphere find it weird that we have these hot days on Christmas, whereas for most Australians, it's weird if we don't get a hot day on Christmas Day. So let's jump in and see what he's got to say about Australian Christmases.
How different is an Australian Christmas to the rest of the world? People often criticise that Christmas is so different in Australia that you just don't have this Christmassy feeling. Well, according to this Daily Mail article, and yeah, I know there aren't many good facts that start with according to this Daily Mail article, but hear me out. Well, in a survey of 2,000 people from a range of different countries, they voted Australia as the best for Christmas. So these are my 13 differences that you might experience during a Christmas in Australia, and you can let me know whether you think it's better or not.
So, given the multitude of videos that you see on YouTube of people saying that Australian Christmases aren't even really Christmas because you don't get the snow, etc., I find this quite surprising that they're saying that Americans and Brits prefer to spend Christmas in Australia. Because I thought it would have been the opposite. I thought a lot of people would be like, nah, we want to be in like the UK or the US, depending on where they come from, because of that whole romanticism of the white Christmas.
Now, the first one with Christmas obviously being in the summer is we kind of dress a little bit differently. And what I mean by that is there's no ugly Christmas knitwear. If you wear any knitwear in Australia during Christmas, you're gonna melt. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't like ugly Christmas related attire. Ugly Christmas t-shirts, ugly Christmas shirts. Depending on how bogan you want to be, I reckon you could go for a lovely, ugly Christmas singlet. Because whilst the general nature of what you're wearing at Christmas, i.e. how thick it is, might be a little bit slightly different, the fact that Christmas is so festive that you want to dress up like a twat doesn't really change.
Okay, but can we acknowledge a few different things here? First of all, most of us don't wear Christmas t-shirts as like everyday wear leading up to Christmas. We might do it if we have something like a Christmas lunch or something that's an informal one, or just something that you know that other people are going to be looking a bit Christmassy, so you pull out the daggy old Christmas t-shirt. But it's not something that we go over the top with. And I think the other big difference is the individuality. In Australia, if you're going to wear a Christmas t-shirt, you pick one out that resonates with you. It's not something where your whole family wear identical Christmas t-shirts. And I find it so fascinating when I see images of American families, for example, all wearing these Christmas sweaters that all match. And they put out these Christmas photos of their family all in Christmas sweaters. And to me, that is just so foreign.
How many of you love the smell of fresh pine at Christmas? Do you love a real Christmas tree? Well, in Australia, you might be ever so slightly disappointed. You can get real Christmas trees in Australia, probably more so in the southern states. But up here in sunny Queensland, getting a real Christmas tree isn't the easiest thing in the world. And especially in this heat, which is warm in most places at Christmas time in Australia, sorry Tasmania, how long do you think a real Christmas tree would last once it's been cut down and left out? I often think of Christmases in the UK, and the main thing that I remember about having a real Christmas tree was pine needles constantly dropping. Like the fact of everything in Australia about Christmas, you're going to have a bit of fake snow, you're going to have a bit of fake other cold things. Most people just opt for having a fake tree as well.
Okay, as a former Tasmanian, I just want to acknowledge one thing, and that is that probably 3 out of 4 Christmas days are going to be up close to 30 degrees. Something you can almost rely on in Tasmania is a hot Christmas day. Well, hot for Tasmanian. So, no, it's not always cold on Christmas Day in Tasmania. Although I do remember my grandmother telling me a story of like somewhere like Lyowini or somewhere like that where they had snow on Christmas Day. That's obviously going back to early or early-ish 1900s, but that's something that I could believe of Tasmania. But for the most part, in the southern areas, like in Hobart, in Lonnie, chances are it's going to be around 30 degrees. You're going to still be able to sit outside and enjoy the weather. Now back onto Christmas trees. I think the thing to acknowledge here too is that most of our bushland is eucalyptus or gum. We don't have a lot of conifers, a lot of pine trees. Yes, there used to be areas that were plantations that were used for paper, or I don't even know the purpose of the one that used to be at 7 Mile Beach, but it's not something that you see a lot of in Australia. So we don't have all these plantations where they grow Christmas trees all over the place, or forests full of Christmas trees. So aside from the fact that they would die off pretty quickly in Australian heat, the other side of it is we just don't have them growing that prolifically here in Australia. And at the same time, I can remember as a teenager, we decided we wanted a real Christmas tree, and we bought one in a pot, and it died by the following Christmas. So it was a heck of a lot of money for a tree that we got one Christmas out of, because they don't like being in pots apparently. So yeah, plastic Christmas trees all the way here. It's just the most practical, I think. That said, this is the second Christmas for me where any sort of Christmas tree is off the table because of a certain mischievous cat who is now heading into her second Christmas and would love to kill a Christmas tree.
Who actually likes Christmas desserts? Christmas cake, with all that marzipan, pretty heavy. Christmas pudding, and to make it taste a little bit less shit, just pour a load of brandy on it and set it on fire. Well, this is probably one of the best things about an Australian Christmas, which you could do in a colder climate, but it wouldn't really work. And sorry, New Zealand, I have to be with my Australian brothers here. Australia invented it first, and it's the greatest part about a Christmas dessert. It's a pavlova. Who at the end of a hearty meal needs a massive stodgy dessert that might have a coin in it that's to take your tooth out? Just have a light, refreshing pavlova. And if you want to customize it a little bit, you can have whatever fruits you want. Strawberries, passion fruit, kiwis. I mean, not New Zealanders like kiwi fruit. The pavlova is quite possibly the best Christmas dessert you can have, and what better way to celebrate it than having it in the summer with your Bogan Chrissy singlet on.
Okay, well, in my family, Christmas was always a smorgasbord kind of thing. So there'd be probably half a dozen different types of salads, handful of cold meats, chicken, maybe a bit of beef, the usual stuff. But it was smorgasbord, so you got as much as you wanted on your plate or as little as you wanted. And when it came to desserts, most of us would go for pav, but usually because it was Christmas, you'd still go for traditional as well. So in our family, you'd fill up on your first course, or on Dad's side of the family, we used to start with the good old prawn cocktail, then go with the main meal, and then have desserts. And in our family, you'd probably have a bit of pav, and then come back for some Christmas pudding. And you might either have custard on it, brandy custard, or ice cream. So maybe that's the difference in terms of pudding. You know, we tend to go with ice cream with our Christmas pudding as opposed to going too heavy with cream and stuff. Although, you know, at the same time, a lot of people will go the pudding, the custard, and the ice cream. But the point there is, I think he's being ripped off. You can have more than one dessert on Christmas Day. Or that's at least how my family does it.
How much of a pain in the arse are Christmas decorations? As the father of the house, I can think of no other ball ache than when December rolls around, because I won't do it in November because that's just weird. I am the one that is tasked with getting the Christmas decorations, and particularly the outside ones, assisting on their erection. Didn't think I'd ever say erection on a YouTube video. Well, in Australia, for Christmas decorations, sometimes people just think that they don't really exist. But like the love of Vegemite, which is kind of the similar thing to Marmite, but just better, Chrissy decorations are a love-hate relationship. You will have houses that don't have anything on them. It's like Christmas didn't exist in their house. And you will get others where at night time you can see it from the International Space Station. Some places in Australia, it's not even just one house. The whole street will get fully into it. In the UK, I never really saw so many houses so concentrated together going full out on Christmas decorations. But by the same token, I never saw whole streets where it was like no one wanted to celebrate the festiveness of the season. If you think Aussies don't like Christmas because of how little they decorate their houses, then you're just looking in the wrong street, mate.
So I was always told that you don't put your decorations up before the 1st of December, and that you have to take them down within 12 days of Christmas Day. It's just like the rules. But the funny thing is, I've noticed from listening to various American podcasts or live streams that a lot of Americans seem to want to put their Christmas decorations up straight after Thanksgiving, which is like early-ish in November. So their decorations are going up super, super early. And that just does my head in completely, coming from a culture where you don't put your decorations up until 1st of December. That just feels so wrong to me. I have to say, I like that he said that Vegemite is better than Marmite. I don't mind Marmite, but I definitely prefer Vegemite. As for the whole Christmas decoration thing in Australia, it is, I guess we are a little different in that response. I mean, it's so competitive from what I hear in other countries. You've got to have all the fancy lights and stuff outside your house and go completely overboard. But that's such a new thing here in Australia. I mean, I think back to when I was a kid, and you would drive down every street in Hobart and you'd be lucky to find Christmas lights. It's really only in the last, 20, 30 years that people have started doing Christmas lights outside and, decorating outside for Christmas. So I think that's part of it. It's only a new thing here in Australia. But I think too there isn't that pressure, the social pressure that you have to have. Your house has to look as good as your neighbour's house. In Australia, it's just accepted. Well, you do your thing for Christmas and no one judges you. So I think that's a positive thing. I mean, I must admit I don't do a great deal in terms of outdoorsy stuff. I usually put like a Christmas star in the window, and I forgot to do that. But I should probably do that for a few days. But, I don't feel pressured to do it. And if I were to go up and down my street right now, I would see very, very little Christmas lights. But then if I wanted to go check out Christmas lights, every community has somewhere where you can get a list of where to go to see Christmas lights. So I think I like the way we do it here in Australia because there isn't the pressure, but you can still appreciate it and people can still go all out if they want to.
What month can you expect to hear your first Christmas song on the radio? Because I remember when I used to live in the UK, it wasn't uncommon to hear it in November, and God forbid you ever started hearing Christmas songs in shops from as early as October. Well, thankfully in Australia, that madness is left in the Northern Hemisphere. Whilst I have to agree that Christmas doesn't really start until you hear Mariah Carey, considering how often it is played, you don't need to hear it straight away. It's the final week of Christmas preparations, and in Australia, on the radio, they still haven't gone fully crazy on the Christmas songs. Why? I don't know. Life's pretty good when it's in the summer, so you don't need to be constantly reminded about how shit life is and that you've got Christmas to look forward to by just hammering on the songs where they're not allowed to say the naughty words anymore. Do you need to hear Christmas songs to get in the spirit? It's a bit sad if you do.
Let's face it, I think unless you listen to like ABC radio or, you know, one of those kinds of classical music stations, then even right up to Christmas, you're probably not going to hear Christmas songs very often on the radio. You might hear one or two throughout the day. They really don't push it, which is kind of a good thing, you know. If you want to get your fill of Christmas songs, then there's always going to be carols by candlelight on the television. Usually you've got your Sydney ones and your Melbourne ones. And we seem to be happy enough with that.
Who actually dreams of having a white Christmas? Yep, me. And in my 32 years of living in the UK, how often did it actually happen? Once. And it wasn't even really snow, it was just like thicker, chunkier hail, and it didn't even settle, but there was kind of frozen water in the atmosphere. That is as good as we got. Now if you're watching this from America or Canada, then you probably have experienced your fair few white Christmases. Again, depending on where you live, because I know that America's a vastly wide-ranging country as well. But I don't know why so many people hold on to this white Christmas nostalgia, when realistically it almost never happens. It's like a wish that you have in the back of your mind, again, just to mask how the atmospheric conditions of the time of year Christmas can actually be. You're essentially holding on for the best bit about a winter in the Northern Hemisphere that never really happens, and when it does, it's also going to completely shut down the transport network in the UK. Give me the start of summer in Australia, thank you very much.
Face it, there is something magical about snow. I mean, this is from someone coming from Tassie, where, you know, every couple of years you'd get snow settling in Hobart. I used to work up in Oatlands, and you would always look forward to having 1 or 2 snow days a year. That was mainly because we got the day off work because we couldn't drive there. But there is definitely something magical about snow, which I guess when you look at it combined with Christmas, it just makes Christmas all the more magical. So I can see why people love the concept of a white Christmas. But what's not to love about sitting outside on a nice warm summer's day with your entire family, probably with a gazebo because otherwise you're going to fry, and just enjoying a relaxed meal outdoors and not freezing your butt off.
Christmas is quite possibly the most expensive time of the year. Some people get tremendous anxiety with how much the whole silly season is going to cost. Now, prices in Australia have increased like anywhere else in the world, but here I feel like you don't have to spend money just to enjoy yourself. It's probably got a lot to do with the fact that it's now summer and there is a multitude of things that you can do outside for free. But compounded by the fact that in Australia I don't think Christmas is so overly commercialised, you don't feel compelled to do these Christmassy things that cost you an arm and a leg. Christmas markets, yeah, they do happen here, but not necessarily as much. And you don't feel like you have to go to them because there's literally nothing else to do. Oh, quickly, it's Christmas, get yourself some old wine. Spending anywhere between £8 and £10 for a tiny little warm goblet of Blossom Hill that they've just chucked a bit of orange and cinnamon into, quite frankly to me is like someone pissing on your back and telling you it's raining. When I do go back to the UK at Christmas time, because I want my girls to experience what it is like to have a cold and shitty Christmas, I am going to go back to a Christmas market once just to prove to myself, how shit it is, but then fake a smile to not bring an absolute downer onto my 2 young children. That's what fathers do.
So, I've never actually had mulled wine. So, I can't tell you whether I think it's good or not, but to me, I prefer a nice crisp wine out of the fridge, or, well, depending on what sort I'm having. But having warm or hot alcohol, okay, give me sake, I'd be happy with that. But mulled wine, yeah, I'm not sure. Dunno. Yeah, Christmas markets, I wouldn't mind going to one Christmas market a year or something. I don't think they're that bad. But I guess the difference here is that in most states you have markets that are running all year round, and heading up to Christmas you may see stalls that are suddenly selling Christmassy stuff. So maybe there's just less of a need for Christmas markets. I don't know. I do know, and I'm quite envious, that on Christmas Eve, I believe, my sister is going to be going to like Santa Village or something in Finland, or in one of those countries where they have like a Santa Village. And that should be pretty magical, like, pretty Christmassy and magical to do. But to do it every year, I don't know. I reckon the novelty would probably wear off. And to be honest, I think I'm more envious of her being able to have lovely, hot, fresh bulla, which is a Finnish bread, around Christmas. Because if you've ever had it, you'll know what I'm talking about.
What are your favourite Christmas foods? What kind of roast do you have? Quite frankly, if you don't have turkey, you're a psycho. But in Australia, having a warm Christmas dinner when it's 30 plus degrees outside, and in Brisbane it's about 80% humidity, tucking into a warm roast with gravy and all of the other trimmings can seem like you're just warming up for having a Christmas dinner in hell. It's not really hell unless you've got those family over that you don't really like. But again, if you've moved to the other side of the world, chances are they're probably not going to make it this year. That's another good thing. But simply, Christmas food in Australia, you change to suit the season. Instead of having warm meats, you can still have the same warm meats but just slightly colder. Maybe even have a little bit of a salad with it. Or rather than just all of the roasties, try a potato bake. Simply the best thing that can be done to potatoes since sliced potatoes. But there is one similarity that you're going to have probably at Christmas dinner, particularly if you're of my age group and your family remembers the 1980s. There's going to be lots of prawns. Why change a classic?
I think prawns are even more ideal here in Australia because essentially it's a cold meat. And what he said about roast is so true. I mean, there's no rush to plate up because everyone wants to have their meat pretty much cold, essentially. Although, that said, I still love a nice gravy, roast and gravy. Maybe that's because, coming from Tasmania, you could manage to still have your hot roast meat if you wanted to. But I don't recall ever rushing to get our food on the plate to keep it hot because most of the time everyone would just be serving themselves up. You'd all be nattering away, and by the time you got to actually eating your meat, it'd be kind of warmish anyway. And, sitting outside in the sun, who cares what temperature your meat is at?
If you had one drink that epitomised Christmas, what would it be? For some people it could be eggnog, which I've never actually had. Isn't it just like alcoholic custard? It could be a mulled wine or a mulled anything. Why would you just... What is mulling? Is mulling literally just adding a bit of orange and cinnamon and warming it up? Doesn't that just get rid of the alcohol and not really improve the taste? Well, in Australia you can take all of your fancy alcoholic things, which you never drink at any other time of the year. How good can they be if you never drink them at any other time? They're not really that good then, are they? In Australia, just get me a beer, mate. But if you're really fancy, apparently you'll just get Crown lagers, which I've also never had. So it's a toss-up this year between eggnog or a Crown lager. Which one do you think I'm probably going to go for?
Okay, I've never had eggnog. I don't think I'm overly interested in trying it either. But I think he's not quite 100% here. Yeah, you might drink beer on Christmas Day, but I think what a lot of people, or we people that I know, what a lot of people here enjoy is a bit of Bailey's iced coffee. What says Christmas? Well, what doesn't say Christmas? Like bit of Bailey's. Put it over some ice cubes. Divine. I had an aunt who used to do homemade Baileys, and whoa, it would just about blow your head off because it would be so strong, but it's always so divine. So I think that's one thing we do here, and I guess because it is a chilled drink. But at the same time, there's no kind of real Christmassy drink that you have to have. You tend to drink what you enjoy. So you might have a wine with your meal, or if you're a beer drinker, you have a beer, or if you like vodka, you might have a a mixed vodka drink. One of those sugary candy water type vodka things. So I mean, I love on a hot day having a Maduri. Maduri and lemon is nice on a really really hot day. And there isn't one thing that is right that you have to do for Christmas. It's more about just relaxing and drinking what you enjoy.
When you're winding down to watch sport this Christmas, what's your go-to sport? Depending on where you live, it could be some version of football, the kicking kind or the throwing kind. I don't know, what other sports do they play in the winter? Well, in Australia, you're not really going to get much footy. I mean, depending on how much you've eaten and whether you need a nap, you might want to watch A-League soccer. Yeah, that'll put you to sleep pretty quick. But you're probably going to go for something like a bit of backyard cricket, or if you're not feeling too energetic, you could just watch cricket in the Boxing Day test. Yeah, that'll probably send you to sleep as well. Or if you're new to Australia, you want to try something a little bit different. I mean, you can't just try it, watch it. Then you want to watch the Sydney to Hobart boat race. Is it even called that? I don't even know if it's called that. I know there is a boat race on, and I did watch it once. But then as a non-sailor, I didn't really know what I was watching. It's just a load of boats. Just go and enjoy your friends and family, mate, at Christmas. Why are you sitting there watching sport?
I guess it's a Tasmanian thing, but I love the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. And I guess that goes back to, as a kid, the number of times when we would go and sit at like Alexander Battery in Sandy Bay and watch the yachts come in. I can remember one year there were two yachts, I can't remember the names, I think one of them was Condor, and they were pretty much coming down the Derwent neck and neck essentially. It was such a close finish, and being able to sit there and watch the finish was just so super cool. And of course, because you had that anticipation of watching the finish, and you would probably go down to the wharves and wander around and check out all the yachts, then you do follow the race as they come down. You tend to pick a favourite as they head out through the heads in Sydney, and you follow it, and there's updates. And like, the great part about it now is that all the updates are online, so you can just check whenever, and you don't have to wait for the news and sit through all the boring other sport stuff for the update. You can find an update whenever. So for me, yeah, nothing says Boxing Day like the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. And the number of times before you had all these maxis, and before New Year's down on the waterfront in Hobart became a bit rough and ready, it used to be a real family atmosphere, and you'd actually go down to the wharves to celebrate New Year's, and the yachts would really only just be starting to come in. So you'd get to see all the yachts coming in as well. And, what's not to love about that? As for cricket, yeah, not so much of a fan of watching it, but, I mean, how many of us remember Christmas Day with all the cousins around playing cricket in the driveway or in the backyard, because that's what you used to do?
How often do you think about swimming at Christmas? For the first 32 years of my life, I don't think I ever thought about swimming at Christmas, apart from the one time that I was in the Philippines. We weren't even really near the beach, so I couldn't really swim anyway. But swimming at Christmas in Australia is pretty much the done thing. Are you going to spend Christmas at the beach, even for just part of the day? Do you have the luxury of having your own pool, or at least pouncing off a friend that's got a pool that you can go into? Finding ways to escape from the heat in an Australian Christmas just seems like the done thing. And if, like me, you've got hyped up children that just need knackering out, watching them try to stay alive and not drown in a pool is probably the best way to do that. I mean, you don't want them to drown, you just want them to be tired and go to sleep.
Personally, I've always found that I've been a little bit too full and exhausted just from Christmas Day to consider swimming anywhere on Christmas Day. But I do know of so many people who have their own pools, and it's just part of Christmas Day for the kids to end up in the pool at some point in time. And if it's a hot day, what is better than having a nice dunk in a nice cool pool?
Describe what you think Santa looks like to me. A jolly fat man in red with a hat and perhaps a little bell in it. Does Santa have a bell in his hat? Or is that the elves? Santa in Australia has vastly different tastes. Like some of us who don't want to wear wool during a Christmas day, Santa also takes his choice in attire very seriously. He's definitely going to be wearing a t-shirt. Or a singlet. If he's down the beach, he's probably going to have some thongs on and a set of boardies. God forbid, what would Santa look like in a pair of budgie smugglers? And I had to explain this to my 4-year-old daughter today, that because Santa gets cookies and milk from all of the other children in other parts of the world, in Australia, you've got to leave out a beer for Santa. Because the only way for a 4-year-old to understand is if you eat too many cookies and drink too much milk, you're going to be sick. Yeah, probably drinking too many beers is going to make you sick as well. But we won't tell that to them. That's just something for them to experience on their 18th. Drink responsibly, children.
Well, it must be a Queensland thing for Santas to dress cooler, because in Victoria and Tassie, you still see them in traditional Santa costumes. As for putting out beer for Santa, I've not actually heard of that one. But then, I guess, when I think back to when I was a kid, my dad wasn't a huge beer drinker anyway, so we would just put out milk. I can't remember if we put out biscuits, but we used to put out a glass of milk for Santa. But never beer.
Depending where you are in the world, how long do you get off at Christmas? Now for some this can be a massively contentious issue, but even me as a teacher in the UK, the 2 weeks off at Christmas seemed like a massive rush all of the time to fit everything in. Well, even if you don't work in teaching in Australia, it can sometimes be customary that you're pretty much off for 2 weeks as well. Depending on how hard you want to work, you might even work all the way up to Christmas Eve. But as soon as that is done, but for at least the next week, you're going to enjoy what is affectionately known as Chrissy New Year's, which for those normally over the age of 18 can be a constant state of, is it too early to have a beer yet? And no one is going to want to employ you with that much blood in your alcohol system. Yeah, I did say that right. Nothing really gets done in Australia for at least a week to 2 weeks over that Chrissy New Year period. And to support that, many Australians don't even really bother to go out. Just stay at home and have a beer, mate, or eggnog. No one needs to go through the rush of Christmas. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy your Chrissy New Year's.
Okay, this guy's usually pretty good at using Australian themed images or videos, but the fact that A, this guy is fully dressed, B, that looks like a radiator under the window, tells me that this is definitely not Australia. But yeah, Australia pretty much does just stop everything from Christmas Eve through till about the 2nd of January. A lot of businesses go on holiday then. And, I mean, face it, why not? It is summer. Who wants to go and work when it's beautiful and warm and you've got all these holidays happening? And of course it's school holidays, so you've got these nice long summer holidays. I actually find it really odd when I think about schools in the UK and America that just basically have that itty bitty break over Christmas and then are straight back into it after Christmas. It's like, well, to me that just seems so odd, because for us that's the summer holidays. But I get it, they probably think the same about us in the middle of the year.
In fact, just enjoy all of the differences. because in Australia, Christmas is never really going to be the same. Christmas is about making memories with your loved ones, and not just hanging on to weird old traditions that are never really ever going to work on the other side of the world. If you move to Australia, you'll have the benefit of combining all of the aspects of Christmas that you've enjoyed from all of the cultures that you've experienced around the world. There's always going to be someone that disagrees, but let's face it, an Australian Christmas is already that. It's a hybrid of all of the best bits of Christmas from all the different parts of the world, because that's what the Australian culture is made up of. So realistically, deep down, an Australian Christmas isn't really that dissimilar. So just go do what you want at Christmas. And in true Australian fashion, don't give a monkeys about anyone else's opinion.
I really like his take on Australian Christmas. I think, yeah, we all still stress out leading up to Christmas Day. You've still got to get Christmas presents. You've probably got to take some sort of part of the meal with you to whichever family's hosting Christmas that year. So there is a bit of stress leading up to it. But at the same time, I think we are far more relaxed about Christmas here in Australia. And I think also he's spot on there. Nothing is set in stone. You know, I can remember one Christmas as, you know, all adults, myself and my other 3 siblings, all got together and just did a Christmas barbecue. Just for something completely different, and it was really nice. And there's no expectations when it comes to Christmas. It's more about spending time with family. So yeah, I quite enjoyed this video. I think he was pretty much spot on. There's a few things where I question, is that just like a hotter climate thing? Like saying that Santa doesn't wear traditional Santa gear, because that's not my experience. But I can imagine that in somewhere like Queensland, you'd probably die if you were trying to wear a full-on Santa suit. So I get that. So I realise this has been kind of a long one, but, you know, just go with it. If you've stuck right through, thanks for listening all the way through. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit the like button, help me get these videos out into the algorithm, get them seen by more people. And leave a comment below. What did you think in terms of what he was saying with Christmas? What is different where you live in terms of Christmas? And tell me what your favourite thing about Christmas is. So thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.